What's up, you sweaty nerds and greasy degenerates? Guinaifen comes out in Honkai Star Rail relatively soon, so it's time to dive deep into a build guide for our DOT Fire Lady Guinaifen. Guinaifen has a lot of very interesting stuff within her kit that make her very versatile in the ways that we can build her, such as the attack percent DOT focused version, break effect version, as well as even crit versions of her. So I'm going to go over her kit briefly, just so that we can get a refresher on what we're looking for when we decide what path we want to build our Guinaifen. Alright, I'm going to try to get through this quickly because this is mostly a refresher. Guinaifen's skill is called Blazing Welcome. When using her skill, she launches a firecracker at her enemies, which deals blast damage, meaning it hits the target enemy and the enemies on the sides of the main target. The main target takes most of the damage, and the enemies on its sides take a reduced amount. Her skill also has a chance of inflicting burn on the enemies, so she will want to probably be built with some effect hit rate in order to guarantee the enemies take the burn DOT. How much effect hit rate that is needed is dependent upon what her stats will be when she releases. Guinaifen has a trace called High Pulls, which will cause Guinaifen's basic attack to have a chance to inflict burn on enemies as well. Her basic attack is called Standing Ovation and deals single target damage, and it should scale like most other characters' basic attacks. Just so you guys know, the basic attack essentially is kind of like Sampo's. It has a chance to inflict burn. Anyways, her talent's called Patreon Benefits, and it works kind of like this. If Guinaifen is on the battlefield and an enemy takes burn damage, there is a chance that they will enter the Fire Kiss state. Fire Kiss is apparently not removable, like a DOT or other debuffs would be, meaning I don't think the enemy can self-cleanse to remove it, which is pretty strong. Fire Kiss is also stackable and appears to last for 3 turns, according to the image shown in the special programming at least. In this image, it appears that the effect of Fire Kiss is a debuff, causing the enemy to take 7% increased damage, which doesn't seem like much, but don't forget this effect is stackable. It is not specified that Guinaifen had to be the character to inflict the effect, so this means it's possible an ally might be able to proc this as well, as long as Guinaifen is on the battlefield. So Guinaifen might help unlock the potential of fire teams, or at the very least pairing Guinaifen with another fire character to maximize this effect. It's uncertain if there is a cap to how many times Fire Kiss can stack, so be warned, we don't know the full potential of Fire Kiss yet. But in the special programming, there was another image that showed Fire Kiss stacked up to 21%, meaning the effect should be able to stack at least 3 times. 7% times 3 is 21% after all. And interestingly enough, the same image showed 3 turns left on the effect, so this was either manipulated for the showcase or potentially procced in combat by more than one character in battle, or potentially Guinaifen's able to proc this more reliably than it seems just based on the limited information we have from her kit. And it was in fact labeled as a debuff, despite also being highlighted as unremovable. Now onto her ultimate called Watch This Showstopper. This ultimate is more like a bomb than a firecracker because it deals fire damage to all enemies in the form of an AoE with some added bonus. Enemies already inflicted with burn take additional damage, but it is set to a certain percentage of the fire damage, just so that you guys know. This is interesting because it reminds me of Kafka's ultimate, only that it's capped to fire damage DOTs instead of all DOTs. Still a little uncertain of the exact effect it will have, but the imagery from the special programming, it seems to damage all enemies and also detonate all their burn DOTs as well, which basically is like Kafka's ultimate but locked to fire DOTs. Interestingly, the special programming didn't go over her technique, but the imagery they showed, she has a firecracker that she throws at the enemy and it begins battle, so it seems like it will more than likely deal increased fire damage to fire weak enemies, and unfortunately may not have much effect in battle, but it does look like there is an added effect to this, where it seems to deal damage to at least 2 random enemies. However, that is just my speculation, and her technique is not publicly released, so I wouldn't look much into her technique, at least as it stands for now. Alright, now let's talk about some light cones for Guinaifen. Now I'm going to try to breeze through this section really quickly the best I can, because this section can get really long if we let it. There are a lot of really good Nihility light cones. It's actually one of the most stacked paths for viable light cones on characters, and there's several different ways we can build Guinaifen, so there's a lot of different light cones that will work well on her, and depending on your stats, depending on your roles, depending on what you have on your account, depending on how you want to build Guinaifen, some of these will be better for her than others. Honestly, this is one of those rare scenarios where there's not a whole lot of cones that are like, oh my god, this is the best in slot for her, because it really just depends on what stats you have, how you want to run her. So I'm going to give you a lot of different options and explain why some of these are good, and you might have to make the best informed decision for yourself. Now let's get into it. Guinaifen can be built, in my opinion, mainly for attack percent and DOTs. Again, attack percent and DOTs, or break effect. Those are the two main routes I would personally go for her. I'm going to go both routes when I build her. I'm going to get relic sets for both situations. You can also, potentially build her for something like crit damage, but I would probably avoid that in my personal opinion. Don't let me stop you. Have fun out there. Cook up something crazy, guys. Have fun. Again, with what stats Guinaifen might actually be releasing with, we may have to go with certain routes over others. For example, if she has a high effect hit rate requirement for her to work well, you might want something like Eyes of Prey, because at Superimposition 5 especially, you get 40% effect hit rate, and it increases the DOT of the character. And at Superimposition 1, this could potentially still be good for you, giving you enough effect hit rate to not have to hyper focus on it in your relic drops. So consider Eyes of Prey if that's what you need, like effect hit rate. Now, she could end up releasing more like Kafka, where Kafka didn't actually need much effect hit rate at all. So you don't necessarily want Eyes of Prey in that scenario. It's actually a bad cone for her in that scenario. You could also build her for, like I said, for break effect. So Fermata works really well on her for break effect. You get 32% break effect. And this shock or wind shear effect is probably always going to be active, especially if you run her on a Kafka team. It also applies to DOTs as well, just so you know. So Fermata, really, really, really good cone for her break effect build. It gives you a ton of damage. Solitary Healing is another really great cone for the break effect build. Increases the wearer's break effect to 40%. I think this is a really good cone for her if you're deciding to, rather than go like DOT, like Kafka team, if you're trying to run a fire type team for her, or pair her with another fire type character that can apply burn, because when the wearer uses their ultimate, it increases the DOT dealt by the wearer by 48%, lasting for 2 turns. When a target enemy suffering from DOTs imposed by the wearer is defeated, it regenerates 6 energy for the wearer. This is at Superimposition 5. You can craft this from the Herta shop. For Mana, you can craft this from the Forgotten Hall shop. So these two are really easy to get to Superimposition 5. And if you are using her on a fire type team, or a pairing her with another fire type character, you're relying on Guinaifen's ultimate to detonate the burn effects from her ult. So you probably want to lean into this cone to get that extra regen rate and use her as the burn effect DOT detonator. She's kind of like budget Kafka for fire teams. So I would run this on a fire type team for her more than likely. If you want her mostly for damage, Good Night Sleep Well is one of her best options. She gets 12 stacks, so 12 times 3, because you're going to have all of these stacks, so you're going to have 36% increased damage off of this cone itself. At Superimposition 5, it goes absolutely nutty if you want her just for damage. Holy crap, I'd run this. I'd easily run this if you want her mostly for damage, especially if you are running her as a crit version of her. This is an incredibly powerful cone. However, a lot of people don't have this at Superimposition 5 because it's part of the gacha system. Let's look at Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat. When the wearer hits an enemy, if the hit enemy is not already ensnared, there's a 60% chance to ensnare the hit enemy. Ensnared enemy's defense decreases by 12% for 1 turn. So this isn't that great at S1, but at S5, you basically get this to always pop every single time. So you get Defense Shred, and she also increases the damage dealt through her own kit, so increasing the damage dealt while also decreasing their defense. Really, really strong cone, obviously. They're one of her best if you have S5. If you don't have S5, I'd probably avoid the cone. Let's talk about In the Name of the World, when the wearer's damage is on debuffed enemies is 24%. She applies DOT. DOTs are also known as debuffs. When the wearer uses their skill, the effect hit rate for this attack increases by 18%, and the attack increases by 24%. So this can help you if you need some effect hit rate on her to let her pop off a little bit as well. So In the Name of the World is also a very solid option for her. Some of the other cones will outshine this cone, however, if you have them at S5, so don't forget about that. Patience is all you need. If you have Patience is all you need, you should just put this on Kafka, because if you have this cone, you probably have Kafka, so just run this on Kafka. However, if you don't run Kafka and you want to use like the fire type team style or whatever, you know what I mean, is something off meta, this can work for you if you want. However, like I said, if you're running something off meta with the fire type team and you need her as the detonator, you probably want solitary healing. So again, use whatever works best on your account for you. Before the tutorial mission starts at S5 is not as good because you need to have the defense reduction, and who the heck is going to be putting the defense reduction if you don't have Silver Wolf or Pela on the team? S5 Eyes of Prey would be better in that scenario. Alright, so let's take a look at some relics that will work on Guinaifen. Now, disregard a lot of what you see for these stats because these are just placeholders to show you guys some things. And it should be noted that a little bird told me that there are going to be some new relic sets coming soon. And the new relic sets, at least some of them, might be able to help Guinaifen, nudge nudge, wink wink. So don't go too hard farming for a Guinaifen right now, because you'll probably end up farming something else in the future. We'll go over a lot of the different options we have for her. Now, there's some different pathways we can go with building Guinaifen, such as the attack percent DOT version of her. There's also like the break effect version of her as well. And if you're going to be running a crit version of her, of course you run like crit pretty much everything and then intermingle with other pathways such as break effect or DOT. But we're going to mainly be focused on the attack percent DOT version of her and the break effect version of her in this video. So let's go ahead and dive into some of these sets. We're going to go over the actual relic sets themselves, the different combos and the bonuses, and then we're going to go over the main stats and the substats after that. So let's dive in. The 2-piece fire increases the fire damage by 10%, and the 4-piece increases the wearer's skill damage by 12% after unleashing an ultimate, increases the wearer's fire damage by 12% for the next attack. So you can run the 4-piece version of this. You know, like I said, use whatever you have on her for now. You're probably going to farm something later on in the future. I probably wouldn't run the 4-piece on her. I'd run maybe something like the 2-piece fire set with the 2-piece wild wheat. The 2-piece wild wheat has the attack increased by 12%, and the 4-piece, the wearer's speed, increases by 6%, and basic attack damage increases by 10%. Don't forget that Guinaifen's basic attack can apply DOTs as well, so this is not a bad effect. And the 4-piece wild wheat is actually a really solid option for her because you can get the attack that you need, and you can also get speed and a basic attack increase. You want your Guinaifen to be faster than your Kafka if you are running her on a Kafka team. You want Guinaifen to go out there ahead of Kafka, apply DOTs, and then let Kafka blow up those DOTs on her turn. That's the most optimal way to play it with a Kafka on the same team. So you may need to run something like the 4-piece wild wheat to get the speed bonus you need to reach certain thresholds. If you have 134 speed or higher, you will be able to get 2 turns every rotation every other cycle. So if your Kafka's at 134 speed, you want your Guinaifen at least 135 speed or higher. So you may also need to run something like speed boots on her in order to reach that threshold if you need. You might be able to run attack percent boots though and get good speed substats and be able to reach that threshold. It just depends on what your stat rolls are. Don't forget, running the 4-piece bonus will give you that 6% increase in speed. So definitely a viable option. The 4-piece wild wheat is an incredibly good option for Guinaifen because of this. Don't forget 2-piece fire, 2-piece wild wheat, and of course, we can't forget about one of our favorite options for her, probably my favorite version of her in certain scenarios, the 4-piece break effect set. The 2-piece increases the break effect by 16%, and the 4-piece increases the wearer's break effect by 16% again, and when the wearer inflicts weakness break on an enemy, it regenerates 3 energy. This will also work really well on like the fire team comps for her, where she's actually the main detonator instead of Kafka, and she will be detonating all the burn DOTs using her ult. So you might want to get the extra energy regen from this set for that as well. Now let's go over, we have the break effect version, we have, we have fire and we have wild wheat. Those are the 3 main sets I'd be looking at. If you are running the break effect set. Do not break this set apart. Run the 4-piece version of it. If you're running break effect, go break effect, break effect, break effect. Don't split up the set. Now, with the planar spheres, we have her to space station. 2-piece increases the wearer's attack by 12% when the wearer's speed reaches 120 or higher. The wearer's attack increases by an extra 12%. This will give you 24%. In most cases, like I said, 120 is an easy speed stat, and you want her at 134 anyway, so you should get the 24% off of this. And maybe I didn't mention this earlier, but the reason why you want to hyper focus on attack percent is because DOTs deal more damage based on the attack that you have. So going attack is why it's so much better on her than some other stats. Now there's also the break effect version of the planar set. 2-piece increases the wearer's break effect by 16%, and when the wearer's speed reaches 145 or higher, the wearer's break effect increases by an extra 20%. That's a really high speed stat to have to reach to hit that requirement, but if you're running her with Asta, Asta is known as the best support for DOT teams because she gives them a massive speed boost, allowing them to apply DOTs so that Kafka can detonate them. The more speed you have, the more DOTs you drop, the more that Kafka gets to ignite them. At level 10, she will give a 50 speed bonus to your entire team, as well as an attack bonus to your entire team. She's literally the best DOT support in the game. So with substats, or sorry, main stats, you want to go with an attack percent body if you're running the DOT version of her, or the break effect version. If you're running break effect though, you may be able to go with crit instead. It just kind of depends on what you want. But with the DOT version, you definitely want the attack percent body. With the feat, you want the attack percent as well, unless you have to run a speed boot on her to reach the speed thresholds you need. But in an ideal world, you want to use speed substats to get you to that threshold and run the attack percent boots instead. Like I said, you'll just have to do whatever fits best for you. For the planar sphere, you want to run actually a fire damage boost on her because she does deal fire damage. This will be a better damage output for her. However, if you don't have a fire damage piece, like I got super unlucky, still haven't gotten that for this set, you may need to run an attack percent version instead, and it's not really that bad. It doesn't fall off the damage output that much. Your DOTs will actually be better as a result of this, so don't feel like this is a bad option. And for the rope, you want to run an attack percent rope for the same reasons. You may want to run energy regen in certain team comps or certain builds of her, but that's very niche, and you better know what you're doing when you do that, or your damage is going to be lost, and you may not even get a faster ultimate anyway, so you may just want to stick with the attack percent anyhow. Now, as far as substats go, you may need some effect hit rate on her to reach enough effect hit rate to get your guaranteed DOT drops for her. It just sort of depends how much effect hit rate she will be releasing with. I can't release numbers because that's pre-release information, so don't level up these relics yet, guys. Do not level up these relics yet. Wait till the day she comes out, then level the relics up. There's no reason to level them up ahead of time. Just wait till she comes out, and then you'll know for sure what you need. Level them up then. Again, you'll want to run you want to run attack percent, right? Attack percent, attack percent, attack percent, and then you'll want to run speed, and then you'll want to run break effect and effect hit rate. So attack percent, speed, effect hit rate, break effect. Those are your main stats. Don't forget about HP and defense in case you need a little bit of extra survivability so she doesn't get one shot in Memory of Chaos. Unfortunately, the video is already way too long to go over team compositions for Guinaifen. However, her best pairings are with Asta and Kafka, which will be further explained in the video. I'll put it out tomorrow and put that in the pinned comment and description below, so go check that out. If this video is helpful or informative in any way, shape, or form to you, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and maybe Guinaifen will let you touch her butt. Anyways, peace out.